Hey everybody, Daniel Campbell here from QA Bootcamp. Today I'm going to try something a little different as well. Last time we tried to react to Grandma's Boy to see how realistic it was. Turns out not that realistic, but has some nuggets of truth to it. Today I'm doing something extra stupid. I'm reacting to people on the internet who have been game testers and have different stories and stuff like that. I've not seen this one. I'm not sure about doing one at a time, or if I should do a lot at a time. I don't really know. This is new for me. I think it's all really dumb, especially if I am a person on camera talking about a person on camera talking about their experience. It seems odd to me, but you know what? A lot of people seem to like that kind of thing on different stuff, so we're going to go ahead and do it. This one is from So You Want to Be a Game Tester, The Truth About Video Game Testing from MGC. If you wanted to see this video or their video in an entirety, I would recommend heading over to their channel and giving it a watch. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started with the reaction of this to see how accurate it is and see what their kind of story was.
I worked as a video game tester, or QA, for a little over a year. There was some good, but also a lot of bad. Let's first talk about the pros. Well, let's get the obvious out of the way. You get to play video games as your job, so that's the fun part of it.
Again, there's no such thing as playing video games as your job outside of being a Twitch streamer, content creator, and esports. Just if you went into it with that kind of headspace, you're going to be disappointed. I get why you would go into it with that kind of mentality, because that's the way it's sold to people a lot. Sold especially to younger people, just saying, "Hey, come play video games for a living," whenever that's not the job. So that's a little disingenuous if they recruit you with that kind of thing. Yeah.
My job had a huge walk-in pantry full of snacks, and we also had 3 refrigerators full of cold beverages, sodas, and of course, a coffee machine. They also, from time to time...
Okay. So the thing of snacks and soda machines and all that kind of stuff is really cool. It's sort of prevalent throughout the game industry that, you just kind of provide your employees with snacks and all that kind of stuff. Now, it is nice. It benefits both parties, though. It's not just something that they're doing through altruism. These big companies, especially during crunch time, they don't want you going off to dinner for 3 hours and then coming back. They don't want you going off to lunch for a few hours and coming back. They would rather you stay there in the building and eat something there and then get back to work. So whenever they provide you with all these snacks and soda and coffee and all that kind of stuff, yeah, it is nice. I'm not trying to say it's absolutely underhanded, but both parties are getting something out of it. The reason they do that is because they want you to stay in the building and keep working.
I would have dessert days, and we'd get cake on people's birthdays, and we'd also get donuts every Friday. Now, sometimes I did feel like the amount of junk food they were feeding us were them trying to get us fat, so I didn't really indulge in a lot of that food.
I don't know what that would benefit the employer for, to get you fat and out of shape. That doesn't... I don't know where he's coming from with that mentality behind it, but the employer wants you healthy. Like, they don't want you unhealthy and feeling sick and all that kind of stuff. They would rather have you sharp.
Of course, another perk is playing games that we make before anybody else. And another cool part was we got to take home copies of the games we worked on or published. So that was a pretty cool take home. Now, when I was in QA...
That is one of the benefits, actually. One of the really nice things is you do get swag. I don't think people still use the word swag, do they? I'm very old. Anyway, so yeah, you will get some swag, but I do notice that he said that the developers would leave things behind for us to check out. Whenever I first started in my job in QA way back in like 2005, I think is when it was, there was a mentality of QA and developers. Like, there were two very separate entities. Whenever QA should be considered part of the development team. There is that mentality of like, oh, they didn't necessarily have to get like a bachelor's degree to get their position or anything like that. And there's a lot of... I can get into the weeds if you want about, or the shade, sorry, that QA has thrown their way. There's a lot of it, and it's unfair.
Now, when I was in QA, I worked on the dev side. Now, for the company I worked for, we had 2 sides, dev and pub. The difference is dev side works on our main titles, and pub or publishing works on the games that we publish. So people in pub would oftentimes get to play a lot more games.
Okay, so What he's talking about is, it sounds like he worked at a publisher developer. So there are some companies that do the exact same thing. In fact, the company I'm at right now does both development and publishing. So they have their own like sort of internal projects that they work on. Like say if I were making, I'm looking at the stuff on my desk, Berry Lemonade Blast, a game about making drinks, about running a lemonade stand. There you go. That would be like we developed that in the studio. We don't need any other studio's help. That is our game. Whereas to a publisher, if they were making the next Witcher game or something like that, and they just kind of needed we were their publisher, they would be developing it over CD Projekt Red, while we are the publisher, and we just kind of we test the game as well, but we're looking for different things, usually standards issues, sort of like the more technical. Usually, the publisher looks for more technical kind of things, things that are more likely to trip up submission as opposed to things about the actual game's design and stability and all that kind of stuff. But don't get me wrong, publisher needs to be looking at both. I've seen some publishers where they'll use that as an excuse of like, oh, that's not our job. QA's job is usually QA. If you find a bug, you should make sure it's been reported. So that is another conversation for another video because that's a long one too. So, but yeah, it sounds like he worked at a developer slash publisher, and that can cause some issues. But hopefully, he gets more into detail about what exactly he means about the two different. So
that we publish. So people in pub would oftentimes get to play a lot more games than us on the dev side. Another cool or interesting thing about working here was being able to see behind the scenes of how games work, and also seeing games in their early stages before they're finished. Seeing how a game progressed and grew throughout the whole year was really interesting. Also, sometimes you get to talk to devs, and some of them are actually pretty cool, and they get to show you some stuff that they're working on. So that's all the pros of working as a game tester. Now let's talk about the cons.
I mean, I personally think there's a lot more pros than that, but if that's what he was able to find to be the pros of that situation, and I don't know what situation he is, my standard disclaimer that I say in almost every video is all QA departments are different. They might treat their people differently. They might treat them better. They might treat them as equals. They might treat, I don't know. It's a very unstandardized part of the industry, and actually the industry itself is very much unstandardized. But who knows? Maybe that'll change in the future. Maybe you're watching this from 20 years in the future where all QA departments run similarly. Who knows? I doubt it, but we'll figure it out. So he's getting ready to get into the negative, and since most of the video is still left, I guess I should get going on this.
Playing video games for a living sounds like fun, and it can be fun, but it gets repetitive and mind
Not playing for a living, testing.
numbing after a while. You see the same levels over and over again, the same bosses, the same bad guys. A lot of times you're not even playing the game. You're just testing the same thing over and over again.
I think whoever sold this job to him was disingenuous in their sales pitch, because testing QA, everyone seems to sell it as, oh, you play video games for a living, or oh, you get to play video games for a living. That's not what it is. It is a job. It does it beat like 99.9% of other jobs in the world? Absolutely. It's amazing. Like I love my job. But at the same time, it is work. Like if you want to excel in it, you're going to have to put in some job. Like there's a bit I like to do, or I like to tell people that eating your vegetables. Sometimes you'll be having a blast in a game, just running through a level, everything's falling just the way you want it, you're getting loot drops like you love, everything like that, and then you run into that bug that you need the log files for. So a lot of times whenever you need log files for something, you have to quit the game. Like you can't just keep going. Once the bug hits, you have to shut down the game and grab the log files. Sometimes you just gotta do that. You've gotta eat your vegetables. You've gotta do the thing that you're hired to do, regardless of how much momentum and how much you love the progress you're making in your current playthrough. If you found that bug, you've got to close the game, lose all that progress, and then grab the log files that are needed for the bug. It's a job. You're not there to have fun. Try to have fun while you're there, but that's not why you're there. So, I mean, I think whoever sold him the idea of video game QA sold it to him very much disingenuously or duplicitously.
But this comes with the job. You're assigned with tasks like check all the pistols in the game, make sure they work properly, or check out this one bad guy and make a huge spreadsheet and tell us everything that's wrong with it and go through all these checklists of its animations, how it works, how it reacts to gunfire, does it ragdoll properly, everything you can think of you have to do for that one bad guy. And that's
Okay, so what he's referring to is called a test plan. I'm ambivalent about test plans, and I mean ambivalent in the truest sense, not like I don't care. It's like I have strong feelings both ways. Ambivalence being like I have very strong conflicting feelings. One hand, test plans are really good for helping get a better understanding of the game, helping testers who might not understand the game super duper well, how to still be able to test it, and maybe use those test plans to help them learn the game better. But on the other hand, test plans can be unbelievably monotonous. They can be super duper just like clinical. Did a dive roll to the left while this weapon was equipped, with this skin equipped, with this thing equipped. Like it can be unbelievably sort of like just mechanical at some point, with like zero imagination put into the test. I don't like that aspect of it, and I also don't like the aspect that you can go down this huge list, spend like a day and a half, days even, on a test plan, and then they check in something that makes that previous test completely invalid. So like, do this dive roll with this gun to the left, and then suddenly they change the pistol animation, whatever animation that particular pistol was using. So now you've got to go through all that again, and then you might have to go through it again, and then a couple weeks later they change it again. So test plans, I think I have a love-hate relationship with them. I think they're very important on some aspects, but I also think they hinder in a lot of others. It's not a perfect solution. There are other solutions. Test plans, ambivalent, let's say.
it's not just one time. There's multiple spreadsheets that you have to do on each enemy in the game, or each gun, or each grenade, etc. It can get really boring after a while. When I was hired, my lead only helped the 4 new people and I for about 2 days before going on vacation. So that kind of left us up in air on how to do things. Luckily, I had someone in the room who later would become one of my good friends show me the ropes and really help me out until the lead came back. Working QA, there's definitely cliques, and the leads definitely had their favorites, but I'll get to that later. When it comes to testing things, you don't think of
Nepotism is prevalent in the game industry. It's prevalent in most industries, but nepotism seems to be really strong in the game industry for sure. There was I like to use the story of one of my first QA jobs. It wasn't like, well, it was at the same place, but one of my first QA jobs, we ultimately had such rampant nepotism that we ended up with more QA leads and managers than we did QA. That's just because people just kept wanting to promote their buddies, and it was ridiculous. It got absolutely ridiculous. And whenever it came down to, we had to axe hundreds of people from this place, and the boss at the time, sure enough, hired all his buddies, people who were, I mean, I don't like to badmouth other people who were awful at the job. They're absolutely terrible at the job. But since they were his buddies, they got to stay on. So nepotism is a really big problem in the game industry, and I don't know how else to fight it than other higher good managers that know the difference between personal and business relationships. And I don't know how to tell you how to look out for that. That's unfortunate. That's a particular web that I still have trouble navigating today sometimes. So
unlike most jobs where you just go to your manager for things, this job you have to go through your leads before you go to the manager. Also, a lot of the leads didn't actually play the games, and if they did, it was very little. The communication between QA and devs was...
This is another one of those things that is a huge pet peeve of mine. Sorry, I moved the camera a little bit. Sorry about that. This is one of those things that's kind of a huge pet peeve of mine, is people not being in game. I don't care how busy you are. I don't care friggin' how many different directions you're being pulled in. You can afford to be in game for like an hour a week, a couple hours a week. It's not difficult. It benefits you and everyone around you for you to spend some time in the actual game. even now, and it's not just leads. I see QA people all the time that have sort of been in the job for a while, who spend maybe an hour a day in game, and then just the rest watching YouTube, Facebook, what have you. They kind of just coast after a while. And I get if you don't absolutely love the job anymore, or if you don't love the work, it can be hard. But again, treat it as a job. It's fun. It's a fun job with a cool environment and all that kind of stuff. But it's a job. It's something that needs to be focused on. Your job is to be in game, find bugs. Now, one thing I would really recommend this gentleman do, as opposed to everybody else, it might drive you crazy. It's not your problem. If you're going to be a QA tester, do your job. And I don't want to use the phrase "stay in your lane" or anything like that, because that's not cool. But don't worry about what other people are doing, because this industry with jobs and titles being so nebulous and responsibilities being so nebulous, between even just like a producer at one studio can do something completely different than a producer at another studio. A QA manager at one studio does something absolutely way different than the publisher as opposed to a developer. So don't worry about what other people are doing. You just test, enjoy your job the best you can. All right, and don't worry about what other people are doing. Just work. Okay, because that's something that I've gotten in trouble with a lot. Is I have a really strong work ethic whenever it comes to QA, and then whenever I'd see other people that didn't have the same work ethic, it would irritate me, and then I would say something. That was the wrong thing to do, because that paints a target on your back. And he had just mentioned that it can be very cliquey, it can be very petty at times. So yeah, obviously interact with people, be friendly, cordial, polite. But when it comes to their work performance, not your business. Once you're a lead, maybe, if you ever become a lead, which I would recommend not, to be honest. We can get more on. I'll do another video at some point about whether it's okay, whether you should become a lead or not. If you enjoy QA, whether it's a good idea to become a lead or not. But yeah, hey, that was quite the tangent. Let's get back to it.
Pretty bad. Devs love arguing with QA and telling us we're wrong, or telling us they have no idea how we found this bug because they're testing it in the editor, which...
That totally happens. I don't know about devs love to fight with QA. Usually production is kind of, they're in the middle between QA and developers to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen. Most developers I've worked with are 100% trusting. They sit and say, all right, I can't get this to happen in editor, but there it is. And I provide video evidence a lot of times. Like, I've got OBS constantly recording. I take screenshots. I make it to where it's undeniable that, hey, this thing happened to me. Oh, and side note, I didn't close my window before I did this, so you're going to see some light changes. Oopsies, I'm not a professional.
You can't find our bugs if you're testing it in the editor. Now, let me explain for the people who aren't testers. As QA, we test games on a build. This is the most current version of the game. Devs who use the editor to test out problems with the game will...
A build can be from any time. You can have a build from last year. A build is basically just a packaged version of the game. Now, if you're talking about like the most recent build, that's what it is. But yeah, the term build isn't just like the most recent version of the game. The term build is basically just a packaged version of the game.
Will not run into the same problems that we ran into because it's not cooked into their editor. I've had to go up to a dev's room, install the build onto his kit, and show him the problem in person because he had no idea how to do that. Speaking of which, most devs don't even know how to play their own game. A lot of times we get in the chat of them asking or...
It's kind of unfair to assume. Again, he's got one point of reference, which sounds like this one company that he worked at, this publisher. And not all developers that way. Like, some publishers do hire just any old developer they can, like, hey, I know Unreal, you're hired, kind of thing. Yeah, that's not the way it is at a lot of developers. So I'm not going to sit there and disparage, say all developers are terrible at this. So that's a bit too much for me. But I get what he's saying. There are a lot of you're going to run into people who just don't know how to do their job. Best thing is just be patient. Realize that you didn't always know how to do the job. You're helping them out. Hopefully they won't ask you for it over again and again and again. So just be patient and be cool. Not everybody's going to know how to do everything. Be nice.
wondering how certain things work in the game. Yet they hate when QA gives them feedback on things in the game. Speaking of feedback, we were told never to give feedback.
Okay, so feedback is important. QA feedback is usually ignored, but that's not because they don't value the opinion. Usually it's because they consider us just like way too close to the project to be able to form that kind of opinion. Now, I disagree with that, but I understand where they're coming from. Plus, to be honest, QA is not there for feedback. Us providing feedback is nice, and a lot of times it is taken into account. Most of the time, not. But yeah, it's not what you're there for. Keep the feedback, obviously. Keep putting it out. If they're willing to listen to it, keep giving it to them if you want. Just don't be upset whenever it doesn't get taken into account. If you think something absolutely needs to be a certain way, you tell them that and they ignore it, let it go. You can't get hung up on it. So this is an 11-minute video and I think I've drug it out to 30. I'm going to stop talking so much. Sorry. Of course, I guess that's the reason I'm here. Anyway.
To the devs. We can never tell devs our opinions on things, even though we're playing the game ourselves and we're gamers. Well, most of us are. QA in most companies are there to find what's wrong with something before it gets shipped out. But in gaming, we can't tell a dev, this makes no sense, this gun is too strong, this power is too OP. And then when they nerf a character, we can't tell them, hey, this character is literally broken and just doesn't work anymore. Because that's still feedback. So as QA, we have to find a way around the feedback word to get our point across. Coworkers are really...
That one, definitely not wrong on that one. There are some sneaky ways to get your feedback into the game as bugs. I'm trying to think of a good example, but something seems like really overpowered. I guess overpowered. Something seems wrong. It feels bad. Usually there is a way to sort of reword it and to rather make it less opinion based and make it more factual. Usually what I like to do is try to find a way to work consistency into it. So like say if this gun takes like 30 seconds to kill this particular enemy whenever every other gun takes 10, and like I want to say, hey, this gun is really underpowered. If I say this gun is really underpowered, then it's probably going to get dismissed outright. But if I say like the amount of damage it does is inconsistent with other weapons in the game, the DPS or what have you, like wildly inconsistent, and I can kind of prove that through data, that's more likely to be addressed. So there are definitely ways to reword feedback to make it work as a bug. So
hit and miss in this field. Where I worked, we had a lot of different people. Cool people, nerds, SJWs, oddballs, and people you really never even heard from.
Why do you say that with such a vitriol? That was weird.
Also, speaking to some people, you'd be surprised that they either weren't really gamers or they don't like the type of game that we're working on. And in my case, it's an FPS, which is odd to me because you would think you would want to hire people who like playing first-person shooters, but that's just me. So there was a lot of girls in my company that were SJWs that made working very uncomfortable. Openly hating on men, pushing their agenda on people, and just trying to pick fights with people. There was multiple times in my room where this would happen.
It's probably better to just stay out of stuff like that. If you don't have anything to do with it, just don't engage. There's nothing in the rule book saying, in the handbook saying, hey, you gotta engage with somebody if they're challenging you or talking shit about you or like insulting you in some way. Like if somebody's misbehaving, they will be addressed. It is not your job to figure it out. If you're uncomfortable, you tell your lead, you tell your manager, you tell HR. I've got some horror stories where that may not actually always help. In fact, it might actually hurt, but I can't use that experience to tell you guys to not talk to your manager and lead and HR and stuff. So this sounds more personal, so I don't really want to comment on it. So
since I was hired, we had 6 new people join. Out of those 7, only 2 people still work at that job right now. You know what? One of the similarities were, out of all of us, we weren't trained very good. The same lead
trained very well
that left on us left on the 2 new people that were training, and he doesn't even work there anymore. So what are we supposed to do in that situation?
So I realize he's just speaking from his experience and his one data point. It sounds like he just worked at a really bad place. It's something that I would not attribute this behavior to all of the game industry, all of QA, and all of developers. Like this is definitely a localized problem. This isn't something that's like baked into the industry. So I would not recommend looking at his warning signs as something that you're definitely going to run into. Possible, but I wouldn't bet on it.
And the leads that are in your room are rarely there. Most of the time they're at meetings. So you're kind of just left with the people in your room to help figure out stuff. And then they wonder why you test the way you do. Also, there's a lot of different ways people tested.
He brings up a good point about training. There is no uniform training QA program. That is actually why I do this channel for QA. I need to actually strip it down, probably get rid of a lot of the videos and make it a little more formalized, or maybe just create a different channel that is like super formalized. Hey, this is how you do QA, which is what this started out as, but you know, I digress. Yeah, so video game training, or video game training, QA training in the video game industry is less than great, and I hope that one day I can change that. I hope one day I can put, or somebody puts forth a really good training program, free. I hope for all of QA, for anybody who's interested in QA to get in and sort of hit the ground running and understand what's going on. Because if we have better QA in the entire industry, then that just makes for better games and a stronger industry overall. So that's one of the reasons I do this. That is just a nice thing to do, right?
Softwares they use to screen grab stuff, how people wrote bugs even though we have a template, so you can see how things can get confusing. I've heard so many stories about rude devs and rude leads who got moved up to being devs and in publishing. We had a Slack, which is a company group chat, and a lot of those conversations went from just talking to devs just arguing. And you really just see the bad side of how rude and dumb these devs can really be.
So he is doing exactly what the devs are doing. He's pointing fingers and saying, these devs are terrible. He's drawing a line between QA and devs and saying, hey, we're different. You guys are dumb. You're petty. You're angry. And us QA, we're not, kind of thing. Like you're on the same team. Just consider it like a sports team. I don't know why I keep going back to sports. Anyway, just consider it like a sporting team. You're a sporting team? Just consider it like a sports team. You're all on the same team. You're all there to work together. Some members are going to be weaker. Some members are going to be stronger. But nobody wins the game by themselves. It's a team effort, and to draw that line between like the devs suck, the QA is awesome, or QA is terrible, devs are great, stop drawing the line. There will forever be a line as long as you continue to draw it.
Appreciated being in QA. The one and only evaluation I had, they said I needed help working on writing bugs. Remember, my lead left, and I'm now just hearing that I'm having problems writing bugs, which is news to me. And when I mentioned to them, well, how about all the bugs I've written? Which at the time was a lot more than all the new people that just got hired and some of the other people that have been there for a couple months. They told me bug count doesn't matter. So if writing bugs doesn't matter, which is a part of our job, then what matters at all?
He is missing the point between quality of bug and quantity of bugs. I post a lot of bugs, but that's not necessarily a good thing. If your bugs are difficult to understand, difficult to read, it doesn't matter if you posted 100 of them. In fact, it's actually worse. If you have really poor bug writing skills and you're writing, 50 bugs a day, that's bad, because that means that there's a greater chance that your bug will be misinterpreted, misunderstood, completely ignored because they didn't know the real severity of it. It could be a crash and you just didn't communicate that well. Bug writing skills are important, and the whole bug numbers don't matter. I'm not going to say they don't completely matter, but they matter very, very little in the overall scheme of things. Because like I could find 3 crashes in a day, and those 3 crashes be what fails submission, whereas opposed to I could find 110 whatever minor art bugs that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, they sort of overall contribute to the quality of the game if they're fixed, but yeah, comparing numbers is not a great thing to do when it comes to this kind of thing. Just don't get hung up on numbers. Obviously, try to put up as much as you can, just because not as much as you can, like fast as you can, but make sure it's quality, it's good. Find bugs, post them. It's not a difficult proposition, QA. You test the game, you find the bug, you post the bug. That's pretty much it. Like, it's not super complicated.
It's hard being at a job where it feels like you don't really have much say or appreciate it or much room to move up at all. Also, our CEO even said he doesn't care about us, and that's why our healthcare was worse than the devs had. We also don't get very good raises. I worked full time, 40 hours plus a week, and
so, I'm not gonna go too much into it, but hearing someone complain like that about a 40-hour-a-week job, oh, you poor baby. You realize how many people have to work more than that every freaking week? I mean, to use that as a complaint is pretty rough. 40 hours a week, yeah. Crunch is not good. Okay, in the game industry, we call overtime crunch, just because there's a product and there's a deadline, and there's going to be some conflict there, so you're going to have to put in extra hours. And should it have to be that way? Absolutely not. Crunch is a terrible thing that takes people away from their families, and I don't like it. If there's a choice to not do crunch, we should not do crunch. But every now and then it's just going to be necessary. So yeah, long hours suck, and hopefully they don't get to be too bad, and hopefully your studio values your mental health over crunch hours. So I don't want to spend too long on it, but complaining about, oh, I put in 40 hours a week.
now remember, we just made millions off of the game we just released. Devs are rolling in money and taking vacations while we're working our asses off on this DLC. But we are let go due to budget cut reason. Like I said before, working at jobs like this, you are expendable. And if you're not a kiss ass or a lead's fave, you're gonna be the first one out the door. My time as QA was alright.
My time as QA was alright. Sorry, I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, I mean, QA is sort of a vagrant, discipline. To get a lasting QA job in this industry is not that common. There's going to be a lot of times where companies hire up tons of QA for like the end of their project. They keep some around for their DLC, but then they scale back. It's just sort of the ebb and flow of the industry. That's why I'm hoping at some point to create my own QA studio, to where it'll just be staffed up all the time and then just get contracted out by different developers. These studios exist. Most of them are awful and are giving a really bad reputation for that kind of thing. So yeah, it doesn't sound like he had a good time. A lot of it sounds like it's wrapped up in personal stuff too. That's not to discount his feelings on the issue. I'm sure it was really, really hard for him there. It doesn't sound like it was a great time. Yeah, that sucks. Some people are just gonna fall into developers and publishers. Seems like it was a publisher with this gentleman, that are not going to treat their QA well. It's a problem. It's one of the reasons that some QA departments are trying to unionize, and I support them. I don't know 100% know the situation. If it ever came down to our QA department unionizing, I mean, I'm going to go with whatever supports people the most, whatever's going to cause the best benefit for the most amount of human beings. So,
if you still want to be a video game tester after this, great. But remember, this is not a field you're going to last long in. If you guys like watching this video...
Okay, that was a pretty bold proclamation to just make willy-nilly. Like, you're not going to last long in this. Like, that's not true. I've been in the game industry since 2005. Like, design and QA, but most of it QA. So, yeah, you can make a lasting career out of QA. That's not... I don't know where he's getting that information from, the one job he's at in the industry. I don't know where he's basing that off of, so... All right, so that was my very poorly lit video from So You Want to Be a Game Tester, the truth about video game testing from MGC. Yeah, so let me know what you guys think. There's plenty more of these videos I guess I could react to, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.